What's going on, everybody? Hopefully you are doing well. I'm just going to wait and check and listen to the audio coming out of my little monitor here. I can see the audio levels in Studio Monitor, so that's going out for the time being. But let's see what's going on here on the stream, and then we can get after it. All right, I hear it, so let's rock and roll. Let me know. I'm going back to the RE20. I've actually got several. Why is this still playing in my ear? Hang on. Oh, my automation didn't change. Okay. Good to know. All right. So, I've got several things kind of cooking here in terms of changes that I can make and options for microphones. The first and foremost is yesterday I was working on a little commercial that I'm going to launch on Sunday just for my little online church that I work for. And I had to take the camera rig apart essentially and then put it all back together this morning. So it is a bit of an operation to set up the camera and take it down. I'm running a Canon RP20, which goes into an HDMI monitor, which does all my, basically gives me all my color data and, exposure and all that stuff. And then out of there, it goes into a capture card, which was given to me by none other than Balu, who I haven't heard from in a while, but I know he had traveled and then had a lot of baseball stuff going on, and they've been busy over at Bird Dog. So Balu had sent me this card, and I put it in my computer, and it has been working swimmingly ever since. So the good news is that it seems to be all back together. One thing I had to change when I was recording video, on the Canon RP, you can select whether or not you want it to basically full-time HDMI, right? So you can send it full-time HDMI. The camera will never shut off. Actually, you got to be really careful not to leave it too long, but it'll just keep running because you're sending it to an HDMI, and it's assuming that you're probably recording to that HDMI output. And so you can set it to clean output, 4K output, a whole bunch of things. Now the 4K output is actually cropped, so it zooms in. It looks really clean, but you lose all the space. It's basically like, whoa, it's basically like from my chest up. And so it's a pretty tight shot, and decided not to go with that. But this is the 1080, this is the full HD version, and works pretty well. Well, the other mode is you can use it as the HDMI is a display. So if you're using it actually for what I'm using it for, which is to monitor the information, it can also show you the information from the camera. So f-stop, ISO, all that stuff, you can send that up. So right now I'm sending it a clean feed so that I can send it over to the old computer, which converts it to NDI and then sends it over to vMix. And that's how I'm getting my Canon RP at full quality, which I struggled with, which this channel helped me sort out. I struggled with getting that full quality all the way over, and now it is a 1080p signal, and I'm sending 1080p up to YouTube via manual bitrate set inside of vMix and set inside of YouTube. So a lot has happened. My Starlink connection is all hardlined all the way down to the Starlink router, and that has actually become quite stable over the past little while. Actually, interesting. Two interesting stories. First was yesterday there was a YouTube short that I came across from Global Office Hours, and it was the guy, one of the guys basically saying, Ethernet everything, turn off the Wi-Fi. I'll say it again, turn off the Wi-Fi, turn off the Wi-Fi, turn off the Wi-Fi. And it was kind of a joke, but then the long and the short of it was don't use Wi-Fi for anything. For anything of high value. Okay, so if you're putting in the time to do something, don't use Wi-Fi. Then last night I was streaming the game, and everything I have, streaming the Blue Jay game, and Go Jays, and everything that I was using is hardlined all the way down from my computer down to the Chromecast and whatever, and I usually stream it online because I live in Nashville, so there's no local channels carrying this stuff that I want to watch. I want to watch the Canadian streams. So I had this up and running, kept freezing, kept pausing, kept carrying on or whatever, and lo and behold, I found out that the computer I was streaming it from was a Mac, and Macs prioritize Wi-Fi, and my Wi-Fi was on for some reason. So I turned that off, and magically everything became higher quality and a lot more stable. So turn off the Wi-Fi. There's a funny little story for you. Well, anyway, so I hardline all my stuff in. It's taken me a very long time to kind of get it to this stable mode. And the next thing that I think I might do is start playing around with more microphones, testing things out. Now, I honestly, from just the recording / listening test, nothing compares to this microphone, but nothing is of value that this microphone is. I also have my Rode NTG2, which is here when I do Zoom calls and Teams calls and all that stuff. When I'm doing my, for example, my remote work now with Keystone, I use an NTG2, which comes in on its own preamp, and it sounds okay. It certainly doesn't have this low end, and if you're listening with anything like 3 or 4 inch monitors or bigger from for my show, you'll notice that the entire registry of my voice, which camps out, let's say in the, 250 range, around there, 200, 250. That's the resonance of my voice because I have a lower register. You'll notice that the quality of the audio is all there. Whereas if I switch to an NTG2 or even a Rode microphone, it loses that bottom end, but if you're watching on a phone, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to have drivers big enough to pick up on that anyways. So high quality headphones or a decent set of monitors or computer speakers, you would kind of get that full value. And YouTube doesn't do a terrible job at crushing the all that data. You just need a speaker big enough to hear it. So it does a little bit of compression, but not a ton. Okay, that segment, let's call that good. Hey, what is going on? Randy, good morning. You are first on the docket to jump in. And Chad thought that I was just going to stream my office chair today, which the office chair stream was so that I could set up for today's non-sponsor. Today, Ember Mugs. Keep your coffee hot and your creamer curdled. Courtesy of Ember Mugs. This is an Ember mug, the original. Thank you, Jeremy Klusterman. Shout out to Jeremy from Resi, who now works at Resi. He's the guy that got me kind of tuned into Ember Mugs. I purchased this. It has been my go-to coffee mug for quite a while. It resides downstairs, and so for the show, I try to use it. But really cool idea. Ember Mugs, and today's coffee of choice is Tim Hortons maple-flavored coffee with half and half in celebration of last night's humongous win for the Toronto Blue Jays in LA against the Dodgers. And so some things to chat through there. But this isn't really a sports show, but I thought I better represent my team today because tomorrow is a very big game in Toronto, and boy, if we could win it. I remember 92. I remember 93. I remember the Bautista days, and now it's all culminating again. Last night, that pitcher was killer. He was just killer, and so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to tonight or to tomorrow. Sorry, that's the next game. It's Friday. However, tomorrow's also Halloween, so we're gonna have to get our trick or treating done, and then get the Jays game on the radio, and then get home to watch it. So, pretty excited, but it'll be a busy night. And if they don't win it, they'll have another chance the next night. So great times. Hey, this sounds. Excuse me. This sounds good on my phone. Excellent. Hey, go Jays. I assume they're still in the series. I don't know. I'm not watching. Yes, the series is ongoing. They're winning 3-2 right now against the LA Dodgers. And boy, was it a rough night for Dodger fans at the stadium last night. My goodness. What's going on, Technicom 360 Studios? Hey, no spicy chips today? Wow. Throwback to when the show was about spicy things that might kill John. I haven't done a spicy thing in quite a long time, and that's not a bad idea. To be fair, I did significantly change my diet, and so if you watch videos from about a year ago and then watch this one, you'll notice slight changes in my physique, and a lot of the spicy foods fall into the categories of which foods I can no longer participate in, or I choose not to. I could, but I don't. But yeah, chips is one of them. But hey, Technicom 360 Studios, I don't know necessarily who you are right offhand, but you have some history apparently with my show. And so welcome back. I really appreciate you hanging out with us and jumping in on today's live stream. All right. Couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll kind of get into what it is that we want to talk about. First and foremost, if you haven't done so already, please head over to LinkedIn and follow my brand new startup company, Keystone AV Networks. We are a small AV over IP integrator that helps people kind of get their systems up and running, or perhaps gets them running better. Or if you're having just straight up issues, we could do things like troubleshoot, and we can assist and whatever. So here we go. Yeah, Keystone AV Networks. This is kind of the initial LinkedIn page. Last week we passed 100 followers. This week I'm already at 126. So I've had a very successful week. And if you haven't followed, please do. I post every few days or so. This show is, I try to put events up to have people know that this show is going on. The issue that I was having this week was that it wouldn't post the show for some reason until this morning. So I posted it just as we kind of got underway, and now we're underway. So good stuff, good stuff. Okay. So follow me over on LinkedIn. That is my nonprofit page. And if you know of anybody, or maybe you are somebody that would like to get their network up and running a little better, or if you're looking for design ideas, if you're looking for workflow ideas, I can help with all that stuff, okay? I'm a director of production for an online ministry. I do that as my full-time day job, and I'm also doing things like live streaming, and for myself personally, I'm also into doing things like video. Here, let me show you this. One of the things that I really wish that I could get more into is doing like real video stuff. And I did a little commercial for the congregation that I belong to yesterday, and I'm not going to play it because I want to launch it on Sunday, but doing video editing and even commentary, trying to make something that's engaging to watch. And so here is this is this camera, and color graded and everything after the fact. I think one of the big things that I always feel so strongly about is the music you pick for your video sets the tone for the seriousness of the video. So if you have something you really want to talk about, you really want to draw people in, it's important to consider the music that you put in the background. If you want it to be lighthearted, if you're doing travel videos, if you're doing something like that, again, music plays a massive role. And somebody that's a couple that are really good at it are Nate and Kara. They have a travel channel that I was actually watching this morning. I was rewatching because they took a trip, and I've talked about them before. They took a trip to the Antarctic, and sorry, hang on here. Kara and Nate is their channel, and I strongly recommend that you check them out. But so they do video blogging while they travel around, and they're a couple in their probably mid-30s at this point. This video was shot 5 years ago, so shortly after COVID or right before it, I can't remember. But they went on a cruise, and they went to Antarctic, and that is a destination for me that's high on the bucket list, we'll say. I don't know if it's on my wife's bucket list, so I might be going alone. But that would be a huge bucket list for me, and part of it is because of this video that they made. I love cruising. You guys know that already, but the going to places where very few people have ever been, Alaska is like that for me, because not everybody goes. Now, the cruising industry pipes tens and hundreds of thousands of people there every year, but in the grand scheme of how many people are in the world, very few people have gone and seen Alaska. And then to even go more remotely and to go even further into Alaska is really like my next step in discovering places that people don't normally go. I would love to see more of that and be one of the few people who have seen that. So I always, that's the way I kind of look at it. And I felt that way with Alaska, because when you cruise in Alaska and you're looking at the shoreline, which again, hundreds of thousands of people have seen, in the grand scheme of things, it is a place that not everybody gets to go and see. And so you kind of do see a lot of untouched wilderness. And in particular, Alaska, it's so humongous. It's bigger than Texas. So much of it is underdeveloped or undeveloped at all. And it's just full of rich, like natural, untouched by humans type of wilderness. And so there are very few places in the world that are like that anymore. And Alaska is one of them. And so I just kind of I like that. I've been to Alaska twice. I went once with my wife in 2019 and again with my kids and wife in 22. And both trips I think about daily. I think about them fondly, and it was great. So, all right, soapbox done. Tim Hortons coffee. Breakfast of Champions. All righty. So let me jumpy over back. All right, let me go back over to socials here real quick and catch up with you guys. All right, so you don't put the Benny Hill theme song on during your altar call. So we don't actually do any music during any of that. We don't really even have an altar call, because we encourage people to get into their church communities wherever they are, and then to use us as supplement learning or whatever. So that's usually our standard. We're publicly funded, not by the taxpayer, but by people donating, and that's what continues our ministry. So yeah, it's hey, use us as a backup or use us as a substitute, or if you want to continue learning, use our stuff. So that's where our ministry uses. And so we don't actually do any music like that. But for this announcement, this level of editing that I did for this video edit for this announcement, and for just in general, it kind of steps it up in terms of what it is that we would normally produce. So this is next level, 24 frames, background music, color graded, multiple shots, not just to sit in front of the camera and talk, much like this show is, but it is it's designed to be a little bit more intentional. So we don't normally do that, and that's the first time that this style of video editing will be done. Antarctica is a +1 on my bucket list. Agreed. I've flown all around Alaska and assessed a 206 doing music ministry. What a blast. I didn't get all the way up to the top, though. Really? Man, that's cool. First of all, you're living two of my dreams. Flying around in a Cessna 206, that's pretty cool. Was that not a beaver plane, but was it a float plane that you were using? Because typically they are, or a bush plane. Those are pretty neat. A little jelly about that, because that sounds like a lot of fun. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's tidy up here. I'm going to close out the tabs that I no longer need. Let's talk briefly. I need to open a new tab. Let's talk briefly about where we're at on the studio and garage build before we get into the content of today's show. So I have been, if you're new to the show or you haven't been back in a while, I have been building what I'm lovingly referring to as the barn. And the barn is a garage that will house my F-150, which is a short box, 5.5 foot box with it's an F-150 Lariat, so it has the extended cab or the crew cab or whatever you want to call it. Well, we are in the throes of finishing up that project. Now, the builder told me on Tuesday that he would be here today to finish things up. However, big surprise, he's not here. So we will find out later tonight what held him back, and hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. Probably the rain. It's been raining here in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, for the past 4 days, and it's been getting more and more intense. The problem is that water is building in my garage because the roof isn't finished and the tar paper's not apparently down, and so more and more water is leaking into my garage. So I'm going to have to get some air movement through there, which means I'll open up the window once the rain stops. It's just not getting hot anymore. It's 55 degrees. Right now, maybe it is 48 degrees. My goodness. So I'm going to have to squeegee out the garage. I also need to clean, like power wash it out once they are officially done, get all the mud and everything out of there. But we are filling up with water, unfortunately, inside the garage, and that's not great for the wood studs and all of that jazz. And so I think last week I probably shared these photos, but here my daughter and I are up in the top of the building, and this is almost ready for board and batten siding. The boards are on, the batten is not. And so we were up in the attic. It's a humongous attic, which is amazing because I can do a lot with that. So actually, here's a panoramic shot of the attic. It's beautiful. It's huge. And I'm really looking forward to having this space. And I have an abundance of ideas for this space. So that'll be great to have that option. But the latest photos look like this. So this is the interior with the back window in, with the doors in, with the door on the back end. There's also a door here on the left of this photo that's off frame that you currently can't see. And then, of course, the garage door, which hasn't been delivered yet, and a window on the right-hand side. So I can actually show you that, kind of the front of that building next. I guess you can't really see it very well, but let me show you kind of what. Oh, I need to take a more recent picture, evidently. So this is basically that same space. You can see the window on the right, door on the left. Garage door has not been installed. More has been done, and there's a lot less materials in the driveway. Now, some things that kind of got overlooked was they did not deliver the correct color shingles. And this company that I'm working with don't typically do board and batten or shingles, and so they have to special order them again. No idea when that's going to be here, probably 2 to 3 weeks. So we could really use the tar paper up there, but everything is very wet outside. So I'm gonna let the builder come back and figure out what next steps are, because he's gonna have to figure out what the next steps are. And in the meantime, we have been, watching the Blue Jays play. So the garage is almost finished. I need to take I should have gone out this morning and taken a photo for you. But hey, come back next week and you'll see more updated photos. I did put door handles on the doors, and I put locks on them and a bunch of things. And so progress. My truck, actually I went to Home Depot early this week, picked up a bunch of wall boxes for power outlets. I'm going to build on the, let's go here. In the garage space, I'm going to actually build a kind of like a workbench. So you can see here behind the stairs, there's a wall that's being built. That's going to be my studio. This studio is moving out there. So that wall is 2/3 built. I am going to build a workbench along this wall that also has a sink, probably a multi-purpose sink that we can wash off muddy boots and muddy kids and maybe a muddy dog one day. So we will build a workbench here that's going to be about 30 inches high. And for reference here, okay, if I go on up here, 30 inches is 2 feet 6 inches, okay? And if I were to put this on the ground, you might think, why do you only want it to be 30 inches? Well, typically a workbench, okay, that you're going to be using saws or you're going to be drilling things or whatever, you want the top of the workbench to be right around the top of your arms while you're standing. And I kind of inquired online a little bit, did some research, and ideally 30 inches or 32 inches, somewhere in there, is probably the right height for a wood bench, something that you're going to use a bunch of tools on. So I'm going to build it all along that wall, and I'm going to have room and a home for many of my tools that I got when my parents moved out of their house. So my dad had a whole wood shop and everything. Well, now I'm going to have a home, and that's going to be pretty exciting. Now, it's going to be it's not going to be super long, super deep. It's going to be shorter, but it'll be a very useful space. And then I'm going to actually also inlay my radial arm saw. I have I don't know if it's a radial arm saw, but it's a skill saw or something like that has an arm, but it needs to be mounted to a table to really cut boards correctly. And it needs to be lined up with the back of the wall. So you can push boards up against it, run them, cut them, move quickly. I don't have any. I've never had anything like that. So never have I ever had a garage that would fit my truck. But I also have never had an actual workbench that I owned that is built for my tools. And so that is what is going to happen here in the next year. That workbench is not the highest priority. The highest priority is the office space, because there's lots of, there's a recording studio and a few other things that are going to happen out there. So at Home Depot, I picked up a bunch of electrical stuff, which we're going to be doing outlets. We're going to be running 100 amp service to here. I ordered a panel for that, which should match the house panel as well, so I can feed those wires eventually through a chase that will come up into this space, and then we'll terminate it here. It's going to be a job, but I'd like to get that part done. I'd like to get at least the chase and stuff done, all the PVC done before winter, before the end of November, essentially, because then the ground starts to get hard, and then it doesn't really relent again until the spring, which in Tennessee is March or April. Well, I'd like to be working indoors at that point. So, I might be insulating in the winter. I might be insulating my office in the winter, and a handful of things. But if we have electrical, then that means I can have lights. I can put, sconces on the outside. I can do all that stuff, and it'll be a good workspace. So I'm pretty excited about that. That, I think, is going to be a really exciting time to be alive here at my house. So where did socials go? Didn't show up here. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so really looking forward to that. I've got lots of things bouncing around in my head, but the first things are first. I got to get electrical out to this building, and I've got to run it. So let's make that happen. Those parts are on order. Most of them should be here by Monday. The thing that isn't on order is the 2-gauge wire, stranded wire that I need to get because it's kind of expensive. But to run 100 amps dual breaker is going to be a doozy. So I'm going to have some work to do. But if I can install the chase before the winter comes, then I could do any of that. If it's snowing outside, it doesn't matter. I could just work out in the garage. So I'm going to try and chip away one little project a week. And, in a year, I should have 52 projects completed. So that's the plan. All right. ADA specs for countertops is 30 to 32 inches high, so that you're ready for wheelchair years. Which may not be far off. That's why I'm trying to address my whole health now instead of later. So that's hilarious. Yes, I would like to be compliant for wheelchairs. You never know. Oh, my dual pole 100 amp breaker is out for delivery. Well, there you go. I don't have anything else. I just have the breaker. But it'll be great to at least have that on hand. All right. So today you probably noticed the little thumbnail that I made is going to be about Netgear 460X routers. And this is a pretty exciting topic. So let's get into it. I'm going to actually record this bit. So let's do that. Okay, recently we installed a Netgear 460, whatever you want to say, 460X router over at the soundstage that I work at in Brentwood. And the point of it was to kind of harmonize the entire AV network. We're slowly building it out. We have two 4250 switches of different models, and now we have this router. And the idea was that we were going to have everything talk together in the same ecosystem. Now, Netgear is making a fair bit of their strides towards making it all kind of work together. However, the 460 seems to be in its infancy, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. Matter of fact, I would like them to really work hard on making sure that it works great. And we'll talk about a couple of those aha moments that we found. I also recommended this same router to a friend of mine that we were working with over at Keystone, and he was doing a whole fleet of 4250 stuff, and we were working through some bottleneck issues that he was having, some drop frame issues that he was having. And so I just said, look, if you're going to go all in on this, you might as well get the 460X router and put that at the top of your stack. And then we can talk about network design and we can talk about a few other things. But that's kind of what I do. I mean, that's one of the things that Keystone is all about. So the 460 is a great little unit. First out of the gates, I got to admit, thumbs up. I like it a lot as a router, as the DHCP service of your general network, of your layer 3. Okay, that's what this is. The layer 3 level of your network. This router is a really great addition to managing your entire fleet. And the beautiful thing is it does show up in the Engage software that Netgear has been developing over the past, I don't know, 5 years at this point, probably. So the 460 works pretty well in the Engage ecosystem, and that means that you can design your network top down using the 460, loading the profiles on there, running the DHCP services through there, and then the rest of your switches that are layer 3 capable really only need to run as layer 2, which is better, and I'll explain why. You really don't want, when you start getting into sophisticated networks, and AV networks are sophisticated, okay? Like the disservice, and we've said this before, the disservice that AV over IP manufacturers made was to say that their products just plug into any network and they work. Whenever you hear that, it's probably not true. And the reason for that is that AV over IP protocols are actually a little particular because of the main thing is you're going to love it. You're going to love using this product on your network, and you're going to want to buy 10 more. Well, everything works really well when you just buy the one camera and you plug it into the network and it fires up and you can see it and all is well. But when you expand out and you start doing a whole bunch of different, sorry, I need to just change this. You start doing a whole bunch of these same protocols. I'm thinking NDI, Dante, whatever. You start sending out tons and tons and tons of network data over this protocol. Now we're going to have performance issues, and it's not that they lied to you. The truth is that it does just work over the network, but not at scale. And when you start going out in scale, then kind of the back pedal that you get from manufacturers is, well, if you're going to be using 10 of them, you probably should have a proper network installed. And so it kind of assumes that you knew that, doing 1 or 2 is fine, but doing 9 or 10, you should really know better. And quite frankly, I don't blame the customer at all. I think that that's a sleight of hand that the industries, not just one in particular, but that industries do to get you to buy the product and get it on the network. And then once you've invested in several thousands of dollars of 9 or 10 cameras, then they'll come alongside you and tell you how to properly set it up. Well, in my mind, it sounds a lot like bait and switch, which maybe legally it isn't, but we probably should be more truthful to the customer about what it is that we're demanding of the network. Now, to credit Netgear, Netgear went out before anyone else did and said, no. We're going to make an AV over IP network switch. It's going to be layer 3 capable, and we're going to build the NDI protocol. We're going to build the Dante protocol. We're going to build the data, profiles. We're going to put all of that into the switch already so that you don't have to worry about how do I configure multicast? How do I do this to scale? Instead, you just put in your parameters. We'll set up the profile for you, and then your network can handle it based on the specs of the switch that you're buying. So if I'm buying the entry-level switch, it's going to be able to do X amount of cameras at X amount of speed. These different protocols, this is what's going to be able to handle. And quite frankly, it's really not an issue until we start talking about high bandwidth something. So high bandwidth NDI, that was the world that I lived in a couple of years ago when I worked at BirdDog, because that's what we were producing. But BirdDog has changed to HX3, and we don't really see any real hard push to go back to full bandwidth at this point. Same thing is true about this new protocol that's just come out, the Open Video OVM, I think it's called. It consumes at a high bit rate, if you turn the dial up to 11, it consumes a ton of data. And so, again, I'm sure we're going to see an AV over IP protocol or a profile come out in the Netgear switches that will support that, but then it will probably tell you, here's how you scale. Don't get the entry level switch because you're only going to be able to do 2 or 3 of these sources. Get a higher data processing switch, and then you'll be able to do more. So Netgear has done really the work for you. And when it comes to the 460, I think it's still relatively new in the 42, 43, 50 fleet, but they've done a pretty good job so far. And there are two ways that you can access this switch, and I want to share both of those with you. So I'll give you the good and the better and the best situation. This is our Engage software that we have over at the soundstage, and this is just remoted into one of the switches. So I've got a couple of switches here, and then I've got the 460. And if you click on configure, it's going to dump you into the overview, topography version of what this switch has going on. Now, this configuration is a little bit strange, mostly because you have WAN 1 and LAN 1 in the middle of the unit, and then LAN 2 and 3 to the right, and then 4 and 5 to the left. And it's just where probably the circuits were on the board, and so I understand that. But why not? Anyway, whatever. I'm sure it makes sense, and quite frankly, once you just look at the diagram, you can figure it out. But this is our little model. Now, it's actually a full stack. It's a 1U 19-inch router that you put in, and there's nothing on the front. It's all back. You can flip the ears and make it the front if that's the way your network rack is configured. But in this instance, it is purely just designed to be nice and tidy on the front, because you're going to put these in freight cases or whatever, and you don't want people messing with the ports and switching out Ethernet cables. And so you're going to tuck it all behind, and then you're going to plug these in kind of permanently. So my workflow, I'll explain it here in a minute, but in Engage, you can bring it into this software, and then you can configure it. Now, here's one rub that you probably need to be aware of before you buy one of these and get started. If you already have a 4250 Realm, buying the PR460X, my recommendation is to start from the bottom again and build your network properly, however your configuration is. And why I say that is because this is going to take precedence. Okay, it should. But the router is going to take precedence over the remainder of the network and convert everything into layer 2, all your other switches. And the beautiful thing about a 4250 or a 4350 is those switches can act as layer 3 if that's all you need. Or maybe I have 2 switches like I did at the soundstage, and so the big one was basically running all of the DHCP function, all the DHCP reservation list, everything like that, all the VLAN information, all the profiles. It was all being managed on a switch. Well, then when we introduced a router, we had to move all that. And at first I tried to migrate, and it just didn't really work very well. It wasn't very clean, and I was having glitches and problems. And so what we did basically is start it over from rebuilding our network, and I rebuilt each switch as well. Now, I only have a couple of switches, but this really completes now the stack of network devices in our AV over IP world at the soundstage, having a router, a layer 3 unit that does the thing we bought it to do, right? No Swiss Army knives, please. Just if you're going to build a proper network, get a router, get a proper switch or multiple switches, and then patch them over correctly. Now, if you're going to run a whole fleet of 6 or 7 switches, consider getting like a 10 gig fiber core and run everything back SFP plus 10 gig fiber back to the core, and then the core goes into the router. Do it that way. That way you have possibilities for redundancy. You have possibilities for a different type of network topology. And of course, everything's plugged in via SFP plus. But this little unit then works really well for being the top of the stack. And you'll notice here, there is this square little unit, and that is a LAN port, which means that you can have fiber going out of your router and into your switch. And you can select it, tell it what speed you want it. So it can either do 1 gig or 10 gigs. Now, in my instance, we have a couple of other Netgear 4250 switches. Both of them are just straight SFP. And so I can't pipe 10 gigs back to my network. I can only pipe 1. Now, thankfully, I'm never going to get near, in today's configuration, Never going to get near the requirement of needing more than 1 gig out of a single port. However, you can trunk them over, meaning that we can create some sort of, I guess not trunk, but more like a lag, let's put it that way, where you can say, I'm going to have multiple ports going over to the switches for redundancy's sake or whatever, but I'm going to have multiples that go over to the switches, and they are going to act as a single tunnel. So in this instance, I do have a fiber port, which is capable of 10 gigs, set to 1 gig because that's what the switch side is. And I have this LAN 3 port. So LAN 3 and 4 come out of this router and go into my Dante stack, and it provides 2 gigs of data, and the network is aware that these are 2 ports that are going to the same switch, and so it is basically trunking this information. It's basically making a giant pipe and saying all data can go through this pipe, and it will load balance, which is nice. So the other thing that you probably noticed is that I have 2 other ports. 1 and port 5 are lit up. Port 1 goes to a Comcast business router, which is a 1 gig service, 1 gig down, 40 megs up. And then WAN 2 is an optional WAN port or a LAN port. You just toggle it, whichever you want, here in the web interface. It is set to WAN, and that is coming in from United Networks, which is a company here in Tennessee, and they're providing what could be a 10 gig service, but we are doing 1 gig up and 1 gig down. So the difference being Comcast is only doing 40 up, whereas United is doing 1 gig up. So that's great for us because honestly, the download speeds are not really a big deal. I am sending massive files over here to my studio to do video editing every week, and I actually have a project that I need to address here tomorrow for that. But this little WAN port, WAN 2, is capable of 10 gigs. And so you'll notice here on then the diagram that we have our profiles are listed here, but this port is running at 2.5 gigs. And that is because the port on the back of the router we got is 2.5. Now, I did not have to custom set that. This auto negotiated at this speed, and we're getting 2.5 gigs down from United, which is basically no bottleneck on the network infrastructure, is what I want you to hear. In all of this speech, there is no bottleneck on the network infrastructure. We're getting entire 1 gig up and down from United, and then we're getting 2 gigs coming out of that, right? Remember, my ups and downs are only 1 gig. So I have 2.5 on this port from their device to my router, and then I have 2 gigs going from my router to the network. So there should be no bottleneck in terms of being able to access all of that data at all times. All right. And then we go into switches, and we have our switches are daisied over via fiber. Okay. They're fiber patches to each other. And so the first switch that we have has 4 fiber ports, and that's where one of these goes. And then on 2 of those ports, 2 of them go out and into the other switch. So there's 2 gigs up and down trunked as well between those stacks. So there is no hardware bottleneck. There shouldn't be. Logically, there shouldn't be a hardware bottleneck at all. So that's how the network is laid out. Now, if we just pop over to topology real quick. All right, now we can see what we have plugged into this network. And I don't want to see that. I want that to actually get expanded, but for some reason it won't do it. Okay, so Netgear. So now this is what our stack looks like. We go Netgear router into our Dante switch. Now it's labeled Dante switch because the whole bottom row are all of our Dante devices. They all just come in on the same backplane. This is a 1 gigabit backplane, and the throughput is 1 gig. And so I have full access to all of those sources at all times. And I even have some ports still open. Now, could I change the ports on the top to be on the Dante network? Absolutely, not a problem. This is just a larger switch with a larger PoE budget that has more ports, and the whole bottom row is Dante and the whole top row is data. Okay, that's why we call it Dante switch. The video production booth has some NDI profiles on it, has a couple of other things, and it has a Dante port on it to connect to a computer and a couple of other places so that we can use Dante Controller. So we're ready for expansion. I'm also ready to receive another switch in the day that happens, because I could easily pipe over another 2 gigs to whatever. Now, in the event that we were to upgrade again, I would probably be advocating for, you guessed it, an SFP Plus switch, which would then sit between the Netgear router and the Dante switch, and logically everything would just move down one. But I would probably then move the production switch into that switch, right, into the 10 gig, and the Dante switch into that switch, and then that switch into the router. So logically then it trickles down. Now, this is an extremely basic, slow-rolling, spanning tree style of network. There is no redundancy built in here. So if, and I could, by the way, could if I wanted. Actually, I probably should. I could patch the Netgear router into the production booth as well. All right, so I could take one port, just a 1 gig, and go into the production switch and provide a pathway from the internet directly into the production switch. That would be a 1 gig connection. I would purely do that as a way that if one of my switches went down, the other one could still operate. In this current configuration, if the Dante switch goes down, I'm screwed. Okay? However, if the Dante switch goes down, I'm screwed anyways. It doesn't matter if I'm redundant or not, because my production wouldn't go off. So, in theory, you would either double your network, or you would create not necessarily this spanning tree protocol. But this is a very simple way that churches can get started with NDI or with Dante or both, or AV over IP. You build it out this way. Buy a Netgear router. Okay, that's $700. And buy a switch or 2. Or a decent size switch. So I do recommend this guy, by the way, because this switch is the 26G4F PoE Plus. It is a SFP switch only, but it has 4 SFP ports. So you could theoretically patch all 4 of those into the next switch that you buy, or into 2 smaller switches and do 2 to one and 2 to the other. The operations are endless. However, if you were to just buy 2 Netgear items to get your stuff up and running, get the 26G and get the Netgear router, and that will basically harmonize everything, and you can configure everything on the Netgear router and then populate it over on the Dante switch. So it's a very simple design. Now, if we were to buy 5 or 6 more switches, like if I was going to build out a whole production suite, now we would do more things like redundancy. So we would, if we have 4 switches or 5 switches that are going on a pinwheel and a router, right? Our router would feed into 2 of those switches, and then those switches would crisscross to each other so that they would constantly be almost like a star pattern. And that way, if one pathway breaks, the other pathway takes over, and you wouldn't miss a beat. Especially if, honestly, the switches are unlikely going to crap out. What's going to be the problem is someone's going to step on a fiber line, or they're going to, punch a nail through it or something. They're going to damage your connection between the switches. And in that instance, you want the network to notify you that that's what's happened, but you don't want the network to go down. And so you create redundancy. And honestly, as always, the thing to ask yourself when it comes to these sorts of designs is, how important is downtime, or the lack thereof, and what's your budget? Those are always the 2 major factors. How important is downtime is going to directly affect budget, and what your budget is directly going to affect what your downtime is. Now, industry standard is 5 nines. 99.999% of the time of the year you need to be up. That gives you the luxury of like 5 minutes of downtime a year. It's like 5 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. That is industry standard for all technology. If it's less than that, then you're operating outside of standard procedures. But you can turn the dial up even to higher than that if you want. For example, servers, which, by the way, AWAS East 1 just destroyed their stats. The industry standard for servers, like in Amazon's case, is 7 nines, which gives you about 30 seconds of downtime every year. So it's up to you, but the cost to increase your downtime to that sort of level, it goes exponentially higher the more nines you add onto the end, right? It compounds on top of each other. And so if we require 5 minutes only of downtime in our installation, which would be industry standard, okay, that's what most production studios, streamers, even broadcast studios, 5 minutes a year or less. You can't take out our systems for longer than 5 minutes a year. That's a great target to shoot for. But if you're allowed a weekend, if you're allowed 2 days, that's going to be more like 85% or, no, I guess that's not true. That's going to be more like 95%. Okay, so if you're allowed to take things out for a whole weekend and have them back up and running by Monday, that's a much different standard. But those two things, how long you're allowed to be out and what is your budget, are going to directly affect how it is that you're going to design your network, and also how much you need to plan to spend. And so if I went back to our team, and we have a lot of things on redundancy, all this stuff is on batteries, and the whole house is on batteries, to be honest with you. We have a lot of redundancy built in, but we do not have resiliency built in, whereas if my Dante switch goes down, I could plug my production switch pretty quickly. Within 5 minutes, I could have that production switch talking to the router, no problem. But it doesn't bring the Dante switch back online. And so I don't have a means to back that up, and I probably should. So if downtime was mission critical, you could have 2 switches running at half load, and if one of them dies, all you got to do is unplug and plug into the next one, and you're off to the races. Or you have one sitting cold, which is a great way to not introduce the depreciation of a product, but it probably takes you more than 5 minutes to get it up and running. And so if it's already in the rack, if it's just not plugged in, that's one thing. And it would be pre-configured in that instance. That's one thing. You go to the back, you unplug the ports that are in there, and you basically just copy them over one for one. You plug in the switch, it boots up, and you're back up and running, and you can address what happened to the other switch. Maybe a power supply went, or you had a surge of electrical, and it wasn't grounded or something like that. But redundancy becomes a very big part of this. And so having this workflow, just like I kind of outlined, this is a great way for churches to get up and running. But if they couldn't stream on Sunday and it wasn't the end of the world, this would be perfectly fine. I think that this would be acceptable. And again, are things running on battery backups? Are they, tell me more about what is going on here. So, by the way, that's what Keystone AV does. We help design your networks. We talk about the redundancy. We talk about expectations, all that stuff. That's what we do. Okay, so on to the 460. Now, the Engage software works pretty well. However, I find it's better to just use the web UI for Engage, because this seems to respond faster. And when you adopt things to Engage, you end up like switches will tell you this switch is now managed by this Engage router or whatever. In this instance, I can just log into this, and it won't tell me that at all. Log me in, and now I can see actually a lot more information on the dashboard, and a lot more useful information as well. One thing, we'll just go around the horn here and just show you what we're seeing, but one thing that we're doing is we are bringing in 2 streams of internet, but the WAN configuration is set to failover. And so if we go to dual WAN, we can tell it how we want it to behave. And so I have a dual WAN situation, and the configuration is set to failover, which means that WAN 2 will always be the priority until it fails, until it stops working. And then the router will automatically then start working through WAN 1, which could be anything. It could be a backup service. It could be a PepLink. It could be a Myra Technologies. It could be anything, as just a way to, hey, we can never be down. And if something happens to our service through United, this other one takes over. That's actually a pathway that we will probably move towards. But right now we have 2 internet services because we're waiting for our contract with Comcast to be done. We've already had to pay for it, so we're just going to keep it until the end of the year. So in this instance, secondary WAN is WAN 1, which is where Comcast is, but the primary WAN is WAN 2, and that's coming out of United. You can configure that here in the router and just tell it you want it to be a failover. You can also have 2 different services and tell it to load balance if you want. But in our instance, we really want it to take from 1 as the primary if there is adequate service, and if not, for it to fail over. So that's a really cool feature, and you'll notice then back on our dashboard, it is reporting in that WAN 1 is standing by, that it's good to go, but WAN 2 is my primary service right now, and we are connected to the internet without any major issues. Insight mode, this is something that people might ask, but Insight mode is the service that Netgear offers as a subscription, and you can connect it to Insight, and then you can access your networks anywhere in the world. TP-Link has a similar service, and a bunch of other people have services like that. But we don't use Insight, we use Engage, and so that is turned off. And I just remote in to see this network. I don't need access to this thing all over the world. That would not be a good use of our funds. You can reboot the device here and also check for updates, which is a very handy thing to have. You can do that in Engage as well. Go to the maintenance section and check for updates, and that's pretty neat. Over here is our Ethernet port status. So I'm not using LANs 1 and 2, but I could if I wanted to go to that production switch. But here, LAN 3 is running at a gig, and LAN 4 is running at a gig, which is that fiber SFP port. It is SFP+, but it's running as SFP mode. And then WANs 2 and 1 are running. Now, LAN 4 and WAN 2 are 10 gig ports on the 460X. Okay, good to know. So you have 2 options for 10 gigs. LAN 4 and WAN 2. All right, WAN 2 is an Ethernet port and LAN 4 is a LAN port. So you have 2 options for 10 gigs. You can come in WAN 2 at 10 gigs and out LAN 4 at 10 gigs, and that would give you lightning speeds through and through. But the way that we're configured, we're not running 10 gigs just yet. You also have an option to set up VPNs on this router, and I actually have done that, where my computer, my laptop that I use on the road all the time, can connect to an open VPN protocol that is licensed to my machine. And you can use site to site, client to site, or you can use WireGuard or a handful of other protocols. I have one registered, and it is currently not connected. And so this guy watches for that, and when I want to connect locally, I can, if needed. And then I can get to this web UI like from a restaurant if I want to, which I did with my coworker one day just to kind of show him the power of having the VPN available. We can also look then at, much like the Engage software, we can look at all of our connected devices that we have going on, and also our LAN protocols. So 20 is my Dante VLAN, and 1 is my data network. And there is actually a NDI device here somewhere. Maybe it's offline. But anyways, there's a Magewell device that is on LAN 1 that is running my my countdown, which I can explain at a different time. DHCP leases, this is a great place for you to assign adding static devices to leases. So if you have a dynamic license, you can select it and say add to the list, and it will add it to VLAN 1. You can also do that on any of your VLANs. You can say, oh, look, these are all dynamic. I want them all to be static. Go ahead and add them, and it will just do it for you. This is where that DHCP reservation list is. Very convenient. It makes total sense where it is, and I like it on the web UI better than I like it in Engage. We also get stats for all of our ports, and we get VPN statuses. If you have multiple clients connected, it'll give you that information. We already looked at the WAN settings, the relevant ones in our instance, and our VLAN settings, very similar to how you would set this up inside a layer 3 switch for the 42 or 4350 line. Here we go, though. You can just tell it what your parameters are. You can build your VLAN profiles, and then add your tags or whatever it is that you want to do. You can do this fairly simply from here. You can also do it, though, inside Engage if you're familiar with this. So if I say site settings, I believe, VLAN routing, and I want to enable a new VLAN, you can click on this. Where is it? Select a network profile to enable. do I need to, I don't know. It's here somewhere. Anyways, what's cool about this is that you can select which VLANs have internet access. So if I switch the Dante has internet access so that I can update devices. But if I go to my NDI, it should not have, this is my NDI profile if I believe, it should not have internet access. And so we can just click that off, and then the NDI devices do not talk to the internet. So it's that easy and makes a lot of sense here. Manage our VLANs. VLAN management is set to 1, which is good. So you want to create your profiles similarly to how you have them on the layer 3. You can do that inside Engage, but you can also do that here on the web UI. It's very simple to set up. Beyond that, we have port settings. I did find, by the way, that if you are connecting via SFP and you're going into a 10 gig, a good rule of thumb is to tell the 10 gig port to operate as a 1 gig. Okay? Here's a little caveat that I found out, and I've known this for a long time, but I thought maybe it was the auto negotiate function would have been fixed by now. It isn't. And honestly, you need to be specific if you're not using the maximum speed connections between your ports. If you have a 10 gig port, but you're going to run SFP over it, okay, which is 1 gig, go into the thing that is 10 gigs and tell it to throttle down to a link speed of 1 gig. And this will then light up that port. I plugged in an SFP line to an SFP port on one of my 4250s, and then I plugged it into the 10 gig port on LAN 4 here on my router. And the line did not come on. It was an SFP to SFP connection. It did not come on. Now, it's an SFP plus patch, but it didn't come on. Instead, I came into the router, I told it, instead of auto negotiate at 10 gigs, do 1 gig manual, basically, telling it link speed should be set to 1 gig, and the receive compensation should be set to default, and I hit apply. When I did that, the port came online, and we had no more problems. So we had data passing through without any issue. So this is where you change that. If you're on a slower network, a 1 gig slow network, and you're not quite at 10 gigs, manually change it inside the router. All right, here is a grand list of all the static DHCP lists, and this is another place where you can easily and quickly add devices to your VLAN. You select the VLAN that you want, and then you say here, add device, and it will query your network. Okay, if your network's been up for a while, it should have a populated table. It will query the network and say, here are the devices that I have found on your network. I can say apply all. I can make any changes I want to IP addresses. I can name devices if I want, and then I hit apply, and then that will dump them onto the static DHCP list or DHCP reservation list, and then they're listed here. Check this out. Here is what I've done already with the static IP. So these are all assigned. They won't change, but all these devices are running in DHCP mode. So that's very useful information because I want to be able to disconnect any device on my network and plug it into a different port or a different VLAN or off-site and for it to acquire an IP address. But on my network, when I plug it in, I want it to get the same address. And this is actually a very convenient place then to manage all of those IP addresses. I can see them all in one place. I don't have to guess, did I already assign 10.1.10.2 to something else? I can just look at my list and say, oh, yep, my Dante switch is 10.2. So very easy way to manage your overall network by using your static DHCP lease list. You can also set up static routes if you need to, but I do not. You can enable an MDNS gateway if needed, but I do not. Or you can enable link aggregate, which are lag ports. I also don't need to do that on my LAN side of my network, okay? So I don't have to enable lags. I have a lag connected back to my router, but not across my network. All right, firewall rules. This is where you are going to need, if you have inbound traffic, for example, you're going to need to enable traffic to come off of your NDI network. Perhaps you need to have traffic coming in from your Blackmagic streaming bridge, okay, or encoder decoder. This is where we're going to set up those rules, those incoming and outgoing rules. Port forwarding is for that RTMP stream that is running my Blackmagic device. And I don't think I have anything else in here. Oh, and you can set a schedule if you want for power and all that. Or this is for firewall rules, but you can set a power schedule as well for PoE on each of your switches. All right, VPN, if you're using IPsec, OpenVPN, WireGuard, all of these can be enabled. And here it is that I am a user and I have a password for this network, and it puts me in on VLAN 1. So you build out your VLANs. I'm using OpenVPN, which is a great open protocol, but then you can enable it here, assign a password, and then I'm the only one that knows that password. So, and this is where you print your certificates, and those have to be updated and managed, which is a good thing. QoS, this is managed now by basically the NDI profile or Dante profile, so you don't need to worry too much about QoS on this side of things for the router. And then your admin side is, the general firmware updates, name of your device. If you want to enable individual users to access this interface, you can assign them profiles here. What timing clock do you want to use across all of your devices? Is this going to reference a NTP server, or is this going to be an internal clock, or what's going to happen there? My time zone is wrong. Tijuana. So this is where you would change it to be accurate time across your network. So now it is 11:06. That is the truth. So this is where you do all that. All these other things I don't use. One thing that's really cool is there is an option to turn on and off the LEDs on the front of the unit. So if you're operating in a blackout room, if you don't want any lights or anything like that, then you can just turn them off altogether. Or there's another option here, turn all LEDs off except for the power, or turn all LEDs off including the power. I like to have all the twinkly lights on. I'm a big fan of Christmas, and so that is, I leave all the lights on all my devices so I can see. It's easy to diagnose things as well. All right, and then finally the troubleshooting screen, which is actually something you're going to use when you get this all up and running, because you're going to connect your WAN port and then you're going to run a speed test to find out what your downloads and uploads are. And so we're going to say go ahead and run it. Speed test should be latency should be amazing, which mine is. And we're just going to go full on, full power, see what we can draw down. All right, so 932 megs. I'll take it. And the next one also should be something similar. And this is using the current configuration, so WAN 2, which is online right now, and not touching WAN 1. Boom, 953 up. Better ups than downs. That's amazing. So your speed test is really helpful. Ping tests are also very helpful, and let me tell you why. Ping tests can be used to discover devices on your network, and I did this with a client a few weeks ago. He was, we had redone his network, and then he was bringing devices on that had static IP addresses on them, but he wanted them to be issued by the DHCP reservation list. Well, as we know, when a device, when an endpoint, when a node has a static IP address, it does not send out a broadcast telling the network who it is. It basically just turns on and assumes everybody already knows who I am because I was given this address. There is no broadcast packet when you are using static, okay? So this is why, for discovery purposes, we leave everything in DHCP and we assign it in the DHCP reservation list. But if you have devices on your network that are in static and they're not showing up, okay, follow me here. They're not showing up when you do this. Okay, this is the only device that doesn't have a static IP address, or that doesn't have a DHCP address on my network that I have statically assigned in the reservation. If it's showing up and saying no devices found, and your device is in static, what you can do is go to troubleshoot, go to ping test, and put in the IP address of the host. So I know, for example, that I've got a device at 10.2. Okay, it's actually the Dante switch. I can just say ping interval 1 ping Okay. Oh, sorry. Ping count. 1 ping for 1 second. Packet size 64 bits. All right, here we go. Ready? Ping. Hey, there it is. It responded back. Now, when it responds back, my computer knows, hey, there's a device at that address. I got a response from it when I pinged it, which means now we can go back to our LAN settings, back to static IP addresses, add device, and it will appear in this list. And then I can add it and say, okay, actually, I don't want it to be 2. I want it to be 206. And I don't want this name. I want it to be like some gobbledygook. Also about names, you can use hyphens, but you can't use underscores, okay? And no special characters. So there you go. There's your freebie for today. That was beyond the price of admission for today's show. So then you can ping the unit. You don't need to do 4 pings. You just need to know if it's there. So I put in my IP address. I say do 1 ping. I hit start. Boom. Came back right away. And now I can go to my LAN selection, static DHCP leases. I select the VLAN that I'm looking at. So in this case, it's 1. And then I'm going to say add from existing devices, and it will appear in this list. This happened to us, and I can confirm this is a great way to find your devices on your network if you're converting over from static to DHCP. So then what we do is we add the device, right? We say, yes, go ahead, add, apply. It will appear in this list, and then I go to the web UI of that static device, and I say DHCP, enable, or apply, or okay, or save, or whatever the non-uniformity word is for do it, and then I power cycle the device. And if the device then power cycles, full power cycle, not a soft reboot, full pull the power, plug it back in, it will boot up, it will see that it has a DHCP protocol now requirement, and it will ping the network and say, hey, here's my MAC address. It'll broadcast. Here's my MAC address. What is my new IP? And the router, the DHCP will reference the list and say, oh, hey, there, I know that MAC address. That is supposed to be Jim Bob, and he's going to be 10.2. And then issue that IP address to that device while it's running in DHCP mode. Now, the beautiful thing about DHCP, both in Dante and in NDI, is that they incrementally send out a broadcast packet. And so that means that when you open Studio Monitor will see those broadcasts and collect those streams. And so you no longer need to be worried too much about those devices not showing up as NDI streams for networking reasons. Now, one caveat on top of that is a Discovery server in a massive installation is still recommended. And what Discovery server does is it stops the broadcast again and says, instead of broadcasting to the whole network, I'm only going to send my information to this IP address, this one. And then that one IP address is running something called Discovery server, which looks something like this, and it will be listening for receivers and transmitters on your network to be added to the list. And so then when I open Studio Monitor, watch this, I just closed Studio Monitor, number of listeners is now 8. So when I open Studio Monitor, boom, number of listeners is now 9. And then I search for my devices. I'm running a Discovery server, by the way, so I know that you're seeing it working right now. This device, this computer is the Discovery server, right? Here it is right here. It's running in the background. So this computer is the Discovery server. So now when I reference in Studio Monitor, my computer knows that this is the Discovery server. And so here are the list of all the IP addresses of all of the NDI sources that are running. So we can pull this up and we can see my video in Studio Monitor. All right. So the router from Netgear, the 460X, I give it my blessing from the AV over IP world. If you want to unify, if you want the ability to expand quickly, if you think I'm going to really like this setup and I'm going to want it to go bigger and better and badder than ever, start correctly at the top of your chain. Okay, at the top of your stack should be a router that is a router that does routing. Period. Don't buy things that do 10 different things and then wonder why it's not good at one thing. Buy switches for switching, buy routers for routing. And so that's what this is here. Now, we've got all of our devices lined up in our static IP lists. So then, if my network ever reboots itself, or I reboot it, or whatever, The router will then manage all of those devices coming back. Now, if anybody's watching from Netgear, I only have 2 complaints, and they're not really complaints, they're just suggestions. First of all, keep working on the Engage software so that in Engage, it looks exactly like the device web page. And let me just show you this. Naturally, this is how I want to navigate to this device, right? I log into Engage, it shows my device list, and I hit Configure. It should not take me to this page, okay? It should take me to this page. That's what I want to see. This is the information I want. I don't want the simplified, dumbed down version. I want everything. Show me this. This is what I want. The other thing that, well, as a sidebar, remember what I said earlier is if you are adding this to your already existing network, plan on starting over. And I don't mean that as that's a problem with Netgear. What I mean is, first of all, it gives you a great opportunity to set it up correctly, to set it up for the future. But also, it makes sure that everything is exactly as you want, meaning that we rebuild our DHCP reservation lists and we rebuild our WAN interface, and now we have the option for failover. So, for example, if we are running Starlink and Peplink, okay, in a mobile situation, we got a router, we can set up our failover to be on Peplink as a backup and Starlink as a primary. So if something happens with Starlink, satellites fall from the sky, I don't know, Peplink will take over and you'll go to the cell coverage. Okay, it's not a bonded connection, but it is, and you can buy bonded connections for WAN. Look at Miri Technologies for that, and some Peplink. But in this instance, you want to fail over to Peplink, but the primary being Starlink Mobile. That would be A-OK for a mobile situation where you need to have the options, but you don't necessarily want to be managing it all yourself. So, okay, that's a sidebar. So when we are building out our stacks, do it properly. And if you're going to add this router, plan on needing to rebuild it completely, which is what I said earlier. The first suggestion is with the Engage software, I don't want to see the simplified, dumbed down version. I want to see the actual user interface that I see inside of the actual switch itself. Okay. The final thing, which is almost, it's like evaded me because I went down too many rabbit holes. Yep, so I'm just going to wrap it up because I can't remember. So I do fully endorse this as a proper way to do an AV over IP network. And if you're running a situation where you need to use Wi-Fi or you need to use, whatever, Engage can handle most of it. When it comes to actually customizing the router, I really suggest using the web interface at your IP address, management IP address. But this unit is way better than trying to do a layer 3 on a layer 2 switch. Now, 4250s can do layer 3. But if I was going to build this all over again, if I was going to go from top down and be given a budget of, I don't know, $5,000, I would get one router and the biggest switch with the biggest budget I could buy and start there. If redundancy is of utmost importance, I would start with probably 1 or 2 fiber cores and run all of my switches, one SFP plus to one core and one SFP plus to another. If budget is really no issue for you, I envy you, but I would create redundancy in the effect that then I could run one 10 gig connection out of my router, or router as they say in most other places of the world, one 10 gig Ethernet or SFP plus into one fiber core and one SFP plus or Ethernet 10 gig port out of the router into the other. So that would give me 10 gigs all the way through, and that would be great. Now, I may be mistaken here, actually. I may only have the luxury of doing 1 gig on all LANs. I know this is a 10 gig port. So perhaps your primary connection would be 10 gigs SFP plus, but then you could use these 3 to go to the other fiber core and have 3 gigs at least. So there's that option as well. Or if you don't need dual WANs, this is a 10 gig port, right? So if you only need a single WAN, well, there you go. You could just use WAN 1 and turn WAN 2 into port 5, LAN 5, and then have this one going to one core and this one going to the other at 10 gigs. Which, of course, I'm not showing you any of that information. I just realized. So here are WAN ports. If you're just using a single, that's a 1 gig connection. And then you could plug all of these into the network if you wanted, turn WAN 2 into LAN 5, and then do 10 gigs here and 10 gigs here into your fiber cores. So there's an option. All right. That wraps it up for the 460. It's a great piece of hardware. I think it's in its infancy, but that is not a reason to avoid it. It's definitely worth your time checking out. And it has performed beautifully for us. United Communications came in and said, here are your static IP settings. I went in, punched them in, hit apply, and I was done before they were done terminating the fiber. So it was easy and quick, and I was ready to go. And as soon as they went click, then the router turned green, failed over. We ran a speed test, got those results, which I knew that was what the latency was, and then we were off to the races. So it was pretty great. Alrighty. I'm going to stop the recording and jump over to the chat, see if anybody has said anything of significance. Hey, I want to learn about this stuff. I got a great big FortiGate running my network with 9 M4250 switches, all layer 2. I've been wondering if I should change them all to layer 3. No. Strongly disagree with that. I would get this 460 if you're running 4250s. Again, start over, but get this guy, adopt him, update it, and then get all your switches in line. And again, you can talk about how you want to configure your network so that it's either redundant or it's the fastest it can be or whatever. But instead of doing hop to hop to hop to hop, you could go out of this into a single switch that then feeds a star or whatever, and give yourself a little bit more redundancy. Personally, if money's no object, I'm going to do the router on the top into 2 fiber cores, even small fiber cores, but into 2 fiber cores, and then those fiber cores, 1 connection going to 1 switch and 1 core going to another SFP port on that same switch. That means you have 2 pathways back to the router, and if any switch dies, including the routers, everything keeps going, doesn't stop. Including the fiber cores, everything keeps going. I've got 14 Forti switches for LAN and 9 4250s for dedicated AV network, but FortiGate runs both of my networks. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, honestly, one of the ways that I've done this is I've got the 460 with the client, and they put that at the top of their AV over IP network, and then they had some other data switches that kind of operated outside of that. They would offer that as a connection to the hotel that they were working at, and then out of there is their WAN into their own. So, they were using, it was like a double NAT situation, but then eventually they put a port on the front of their thing, and they're just doing a single connection WAN into the 460 WAN, and then that provides internet to whoever needs it. So far, I don't know much about the switches you're talking about, the company, the FortiGate ones. But if you wanted to invert it to where if you got a 460 and then 460 into your network stack, this would be able to govern all of those. You just wouldn't have the nice visual graphic of where everybody is on your network, which is one of the nice things with Engage, right? Is you can go to topology, and it'll show you how everyone's kind of laid out here. I don't know why this is all jacked up. Searching for clients. So here are all the clients on there. I feel like this should break out if I click on this. But anyways, it shows all of the Audinate devices and everything. So I do love an ecosystem, because once you, and I'm kind of eating my own words because I've built a TP-Link ecosystem here at my house, mostly as like it just kind of I added one and added one and added one, and now I'm going to be adding 3 or 4 more. But TP-Link, the Omeda system, works pretty well, similar to this, but it's not an AV standard. So I have a 4250 that's governing the NDI side of my network, and then everything else is just run off of a less expensive home network style. But I used to say, don't buy anything with Link in the name. Well, don't buy anything with Link in the name if you're going to be doing AV over IP. But if it's just your home, then that's no big deal. That's totally fine. Alrighty. I think I caught up on the chat, which is great. Thank you, Randy and Chad, for keeping the life of the party going along there. Not this one. That's not what I wanted. Looking for my other browser here. All right. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover today. Kind of gone through a fair bit. I'm hoping that I have some sort of update from my builder. What it might be going on here, but nope. No texts, no messages. You know, if you're in the business of helping customers, building things for them, the biggest thing that you can really do to help yourself is to give them updates, because that really does kind of help us figure out where we are in the project. And although you may think that, oh, we're not moving fast enough, or the client's going to be upset because I can't make it again today, honestly, I'd rather know than wander around the house wondering if you're ever going to show up. So communicating is a huge deal when it comes to helping customers. And with that being said, be sure that you jump over and check out my new startup company, Keystone AV Networks. And you can find me on LinkedIn. It is a black and blue symbol, Keystone AV Networks. If you do not want to become NDI certified, Dante certified, network, AV, network certified, if you don't want to do all that stuff and you'd rather hire somebody, you can hire me, and I'd be happy to do it for you. And follow me over at Keystone AV Networks on LinkedIn is really where the majority of the activity is for that. But it looks like this. It is my little startup, and we are working with mostly what we talked about today: Netgear, network stacks, NDI workflows, Dante workflows, all that sort of good stuff. If you want to get into it, but you have no idea where to get started, I can help you with that. I can facilitate that conversation between you. I can help you prepare a quote, a budget, all that stuff. Or if you need me to convince your executive team that, hey, this is, if you need assistance convincing your executive team or church pastors or whoever, this is the next level of that you need to go through, I'm on board for those conversations, because not only do I understand the network nuances and that sort of thing, I've worked in the industry for many years, but I'm a big advocate of it. Actually, I think that I'm a believer, and I use this style system in my own daily life. And so I implement it wherever I go, and I tend to really live and breathe and think that this is worth your while. So if you need help convincing, if you're a believer but you need help convincing your people, feel free to reach out to me. hello@keystoneavnetworks.com. That will go directly to my email. I'm in the middle of making sure that my DKIM certificates are active and up to date, because I had a little issue with those earlier this week. So we should be authenticating my email now, but reach out to me at hello@keystoneavnetworks.com. I'll be happy to start a conversation with you, and then we could set up a time to meet, to talk, and that's a pretty simple thing. So I have a booking link. You can just pick a time that works for you. If you need more than an hour, I do 1 hour increments. If you need more than an hour, by all means, we can provide a time. And if you are over in Europe or Australia and you need hours that are not listed on the booking app, just ask, and I'd be happy to accommodate, especially if it's, I can meet almost any time, middle of the night, middle of the day. If you need help with it, let's get you sorted. I can definitely help you with that. Mostly that means I remote. I use Teams, the Teams app, not the web browser, but the Teams app. I remote in to your location as long as that's permitted, and I can set it up for you or walk you through how to do it. All of those things are a part of the offering that I have. So feel free to reach out to me if you or you know somebody that could benefit, let them know my name, and I'd be very excited to have a quick chat with them. Hey, John, with any luck, I'll be in touch to see about getting your help designing an NDI network for my church out in Atlanta. Atlanta? Oh, that's not too far from me. That's pretty cool. Yes, please, please, please reach out to me. You know, I need to do better about getting let's make a graphic real quick while we have some time. Steven, great to see you. I saw you over on the Bird Dog show yesterday. Good to see you again. Always a pleasure, as the Australians say. I do miss my Australian coworkers. I miss interacting with them. They were a bunch of fun guys, and now we just say hey over on LinkedIn every now and then. Let me pull up. I'm going to add an input here, and we're going to bring you along for this ride. We're going to create a title real quick, and that title is going to be an email, and I want it to be, let's make a ticker. How about a ticker? Tickers are fun. Blue is my go-to, right? And here it is. So I'm going to put in my email. Hello, KeystoneAVNetworks.com. And that is the text that I want for the ticker. And if not a countdown, stop it. So let's try that again. I've never done this before, by the way. KeystoneAVNetworks.com. Okay. So is this right? Am I doing this right? Let's find out. I can add this as number 3 maybe? Okay. So then if I jump over to here and I bring myself over, it stopped. Why did it stop? There we go. Is that too fast? Is that like a little disorienting? Is there a way I can change the speed? Certainly there's a way, right? So title editor, ticker text, speed. Here we go. Let's cut it down by half. Whoa, there we go. All right, there we go. Hey, hello at KeystoneAVNetworks.com. That's a great place to get a hold of me. If you are needing any sort of assistance with your AV network, I would love to help you design it, love to give you a shopping list, love to give you a proposal that you can give to your executive team or eldership or church leadership, or if you need if the pastor is the only guy in town, we can definitely arrange all of that for you. I'm also in the process of trying to get my reseller certificate here in the state of Tennessee so that I can work with companies like Broadfield to help you get good prices on products. So with any luck, I might be able to get that in the next week or so, and that would be great as well. But as a startup, I got to do all the things, right? And that becomes a bit of a challenge. So, alrighty, that is funsies. Maybe I should create a button to enable that. So I'm going to jump over here to buttons, and we're going to go into vMix. I'll bring you along for the ride. And position this one. We're going to go into our vMix screen, which is over here. And I want to create a button that just says email. So let's say, let's do this. Button. The style I want is this. And the coloring, button styling, context color, context background color. I want it to be blue. I want the context to say vMix. I want my button to say email. Email lower thirds. Let's do that, eh? And then actions. When I press thine button, I wish to vMix. What's it called? It's called overlay. Overlay vMix. Overlay functions toggle overlay on program. So let's toggle overlay 3 on program, and the input for this is 55. So does that work? Oh, whoops. Apply. So does that work? Awesome sauce. It does work. Excellent. Excellent. So the last thing is I want this thing to I want it to loop, but restart with transition. So now if I click it, it pulls it off, but then if I restart it, boom, it starts from the beginning. That's what I want to see. It also, I guess I need to move my little picture up a bit, because I am off the screen. So we're going to go here, layers, layer the second. We're going to move me on the y-axis and just put me up above it. There we go. And we're going to hit save. Saved. And now we're good to go. So now, whoops, don't do that. All right, so be sure that you have the proper one selected. And lower thirds is paused. Okay. All right, let's see if this goes all the way across. That'd be great. I don't mind that color. Kind of goes with the scheme, right? But we'll see how it works out. All right, final Technicom 360 Studios. Hey, what's your take on AV networks traversing over other make switches to get to our Netgear AV switches? Any special configurations that I need to be mindful of? Yes. So this is a really good question because there's a lot to consider here, okay? What switches are we talking about? Are we talking about Cisco switches? Are we talking about other Netgear switches, other commercial-based switches? Are we talking about Unify? We're talking about home switches, unmanaged switches? Hopefully not. But yes, what needs to be considered? Well, if you were to basically, well, there's a couple of methods, I guess. The first is if you were just wanting to bring it over a switch and onto your AV network, there are multiple ways to do that. In the training, in the NDI training, and in the Netgear network training, they are proponents of isolating your VLAN to only your devices. And that's why when we have the router, for example, that we saw today, you have the option of turning the internet on or off, which is allowing internet traffic. That takes a lot of configuration to do. But if we were to be sending that internet traffic, for example, off to Bird Dog Cloud, we would need internet for that, right? Unless you punch a hole through the firewall. So you would need internet on there just to even achieve that. Now, if you're coming in, here's one way to do it. Following that rule of don't mix your AV network with your data network, that's kind of like a broad rule that a lot of people shouldn't have exceptions to this rule unless something is seriously wrong or your network is just unable, no budget, no way of doing this properly. If that's the case, then you bring them in outside and you connect to it on a different network. So let's say I have, okay, you said unified switches. So you have a data network and you have an NDI network. And 60-70% of your NDI sources are all on that NDI network. But then I've got 2 remote cameras that are plugged in on the data network on the other side. I would, first of all, make sure that those 2 sources are not critical for your production. If it's a critical angle, critical camera, critical source, the answer is no. I don't recommend putting any critical source outside of your NDI controlled VLAN. But if it's like a backup shot, if it's a wide shot, if it's a non-critical shot, if it's okay if the latency is slow on this shot, and I can give you an example of this. If that's the case, then I'm not so worried about the NDI sources being as rock solid as a critical angle, mostly because I don't have to use it. If it crashes, if my data network is the same as my Wi-Fi network, that's going to be a problem, in terms of consistency. But if I'm going to use this shot once or twice during the game or during the speech or during the sermon or whatever, if that is the case, and I'm not going to it all the time, not relying on it, then running it over your data network and running your NDI network separately, I would be okay with it as a production side, as a guy doing the actual video switching. And the way I would bring that into my system is I would have a dual network card running on both networks. So one port going into Dante and one port going to NDI, one going into the data network. And that way you can still capture those streams, right? You can see them all in Studio Monitor, probably see them all in vMix, whatever it is that you're doing, and use them as if they are all on the same network. But that gives you the luxury of plugging in non-critical sources to your data network, but not needing to patch over your NDI network to like ports on the gym wall where basketball players or sports people are going to maybe try and steal internet from you. So you don't want them to have access to the NDI network that way. So if you don't want to patch and you've got data ports all over the basketball rink, and then you've got a closed NDI network, that's one way to kind of accomplish it. And Unify, if they're Gen 1s, will keep up. If they're Gen 2s, these really should not be priority sources, okay? Gen 2 switches from Unify are software driven. I know personally of 3 different instances where Unify switches fried themselves because of the NDI demand, okay? Now, they're coming out with an NDI protocol, or they have, or an AV switch to compete against Netgear. Great. As long as they're hardware driven, as long as there's CPUs inside, as long as the processing, there's actually a processor in it, I'm okay with it. But if it's software processing, avoid like the plague, because I don't trust it. So that's one way you could do it. The other way is to somehow get those sources native on your NDI network. And one way to do that would be Bird.Cloud. So if you have a data network that has internet, by the way, I don't get paid to say this anymore. There's a free version of Bird.Cloud, a free tier that gives you 2 connections to your service, which means send and receive is what that means. So it's free now. And I've reposted it on my LinkedIn page, KeystoneAVNetworks.com, to Keystone AV Networks is my company, and there's a link there that shows the Bird Dog post. Check that out, because this may be an easy way for you to bring in sources, and if you have 2 external sources, you could send them up to Bird.Cloud, and then on the NDI side, bring them down on a computer and use them that way. And then they would have NDI IP addresses in Studio Monitor, and then you're secure again. So that's the way that works. If you have AV switches, if your AV switches are plugged in to other brands in order to reach the internet and get DHCP addresses, but your Dante, NDI, etc. traffic is all within your AV switches, it should work perfectly fine. Also, most of the Unify Pro level and above switches support AV profiles on its ports. Unify is now a Gen 5. Yikes. So I've been out of the Unify game for a while, because the latest I heard of was Gen 2. So let's see here. Unify Gen 5, and let's just find out build specs. The G5 is a camera. Unify. Let's go here. Ubiquity. Let's just go over to their main page. Looks a little strange. No problem. No problem. Doesn't mean anything. Industry leading. Setup and management. Okay. Physical security integration, multi-site organization. Let's go to switching. Professional grade is the newest one. These are 10 gigabit backbones. And so, I mean, they've got to be hardware driven. There's no way you're going to push 10 gigs over software. So they're pretty. That is the nice thing about Unify stuff, is it is very pretty to look at. But pretty over performance doesn't do it for me. The toolless mini rack. What is that? Anyway, cool stuff. Oh, that's a fun way to do that. I like that. Here, this is the Unify site. This is their performance professional level. Fanless silent cooling value switches, avoid. This enterprise level, 100 gigabit throughput. So, yeah, you know, that would be, this would be probably fine. 10 gig ports. And then this professional level is probably that version of the AV profiles that we're probably talking about. So if you have the budget to do this, go for it. How much do they want for something like that? Switches, pros. Okay, so these pro levels, their big boy is $600. That's a good price. Oh, that's non-PoE. This one, $1,000. Okay, that's good. 48 ports at $1,000. That's fine. I don't have any issues with that. Let's do 10 gig SFP plus, just to keep us in the realm. Yeah, so these are fine. Again, I haven't used them, so I don't know. I don't know what to say necessarily. But me personally, I love an ecosystem. And so you live with the good and the bad when you buy an ecosystem, but you buy an ecosystem and usually live within it, and everything behaves as proper. And as I discovered with the 460, it really responds well to other 4250s, 4350s. So they don't call them Gen X, but we are on all the Pro Max XG Enterprise Campus switches, and they all have Pro AV profiles. Standard would be Gen 2. Pro regular is Gen 3. Pro Max is Gen 4. And the Pro XG and Enterprise Campus is Gen 5. Wowzers. So standard is Gen 2. So Gen 2 is still around. Don't buy them. But hey, if you're going with the Pro Max, their most expensive Pro Max switch, the Campus Pro Max 48, is only $1,300. So that's their big boy, you know. 10G has 2.5 gigs. The rest are gigabits. And it's pretty cool. It's a pretty looking switch. Like I said, they always have done really well with. Oh, is that to? Can you light up the different ports based on VLAN? That's hilarious. That's smart, man. Yeah, that's pretty smart. That's a good feature. So yeah, this is not if you were in a Unify, you already had a Unify gateway and you're already in this realm and you don't want to make a switch over to Netgear. One of these would probably be great for. It gives you 720 watts. This would be good for your money. It would integrate well with Unify already. See, something that I noticed with the Netgear integration is it's as clunky as the Unify integration. And so you got to do the gateway first, right? You got to do the router first and then propagate after that. Do it in order. But most people buy the switch first, right? They set up the layer 3 on the switch and then they want to get a router. Well, now you got to restart all over again, which is really annoying. The same has always been true with Unify. I have used Unify for 10 plus years. But I started buying Unify stuff when we were doing campus security at the school that I was working at. And we were integrating into a DVR, which was a Unify DVR, and that was crap. And so then I bought and built a little server that talked directly, and it had hard drives that recorded 24 hours, and we could record like a week and a half or something like that, and that worked really well. But here's the thing with Unify that I always it's never really sat well with me is they tend to, the life cycle of their stuff seems to go really fast, you know? And I don't know if that's just me, if I'm like, oh, you got a new one, or you came out with the next model and I just bought these switches like 8 months ago. So, you know, that might feel familiar. I don't like that. I don't like it when something doesn't have a long-term support plan because I feel like I just bought vaporware. I was like, they sold it to me to build their next thing so they can sell me something else. And it's like, and it wasn't all backwards compatible either. So that was frustrating. But anyways, Unify looks like it's very pretty. Looks like it should be able to handle it. The throughput looks definitely big enough. So if that's what your budget can call for, then go for it. By all means. Me personally, I love having the the AV profiles and the support that goes with it with the Netgear. And I know the Netgear guys. I actually have spoken numerous times with the designer, and saw him at a trade show last year or this year, almost last year. And I feel like I can reach out and connect with the Netgear guys pretty quickly if I need to. Yes, VLANs are based on LED color on the ports. That's pretty cool. Well, they do still sell the standard Gen 2 switches, so there is that. Yeah, avoid. I don't like those. I don't care for those, but I see what you mean. The long-term support. That's true. They do sell those. So, maybe my it's unfounded. I don't know. Maybe my prejudice towards them is not accurate anymore. But here's a great lesson. Like here's a lesson from a customer that's burned. I was burned a while ago and saw performance problems and got frustrated with them, and I just never went back. And that's a great lesson, manufacturers. If you're tuning in for some reason, you only get to burn your customer once. And then it takes a slew of people who say, no, it's all different now. It's different. And that is an uphill battle you really don't want to have to fight. And so if you're in that position, fight like crazy, because you gotta win your customers back to keep your company afloat. Or do all the things necessary to keep the customer the first time. It's not inevitable that everyone's going to be mad at you about your products. You have the ability to produce great things or crap things, and if you continue to produce crap things, you will not have a customer base. I promise you that. I've seen it happen too many times. All right, folks, it is almost 12 o'clock. My goodness. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It is always a pleasure to be with you, and I hope that we will have more updates in the near future when it comes to talking about first of all, the studio, getting that thing built out. That's happening. And I'm really happy with the way it's coming along. I'm going to have to learn how to use my spray paint system, because I got to paint that whole thing. I don't know why I agreed to do that. So that's got to happen soon, because the non-HOA HOA is looking at my build and wondering when it's going to get done. But I need a garage door. I need some walls built inside. I got to start doing the electrical stuff, which I might put up some boxes today. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm tempted to build the workbench, like I was talking about earlier, at 32 inches high, because 30 is really short. And if I stand up here, let me just unplug my headphones for a second. And 32 inches is basically only 2 studs, but my arms, my elbows bend at 42 inches. So 32 inches would be very short. 32 inches would feel short. But then what happens, right, is you put tools on top of the bench, and they all have stands and yada, yada, yada. And so I understand. I just understand. Get it? But I'm probably going to go with 32 inches as the top of my workbench, and then build out from there. So pretty excited. Hopefully be able to start this project as soon as the guys get done building the garage and putting a roof on it. Then I can start doing stuff inside there. Might put up some electrical boxes, which means, by the way, so if my workbench is going to be at 32 inches high, then how high should I have the electrical boxes off of the table, right? So if my table's here, let's just say this is 32 inches. I kind of don't want them. I want them about like 8 inches up, maybe 6 inches up from there. So 30, 38, 40 inches, somewhere like that off the ground. So that while I'm working, I'm going to have a whole bunch of electrical boxes right there to plug tools into. And they're all going to have separate breakers and stuff like that. So I'll have lots of power at the workbench. Anyway, good times, great oldies. Let's just jump back one more time. Technicom 360s. So the builder is probably at home installing his Netgear 460X router and watching your live stream. Hey, that would be hilarious. If he shows up tomorrow and is like, man, Your show is just so gripping. Phrases no one ever says. That would be very funny if he was doing that, but I'm pretty sure 8 inches is the rule. 8 inches from the surface, which is fine. That'd be 40 inches off the ground. Is that for the center of the plug or the bottom of the plug? I guess the box, right? It's probably the bottom of the box. I'll Google all those things and find out what the standard is. 8 would be fine. That's not very big. Not very tall off the top of the desk is only like this. So if we were a workbench is here, that's not very high. So I have no qualms about that. Excellent. All right. Well, it has been a pleasure, everybody. I hope you are doing well. Thanks for coming along for this ride. Go Blue Jays. Hopefully we'll be seeing a World Series tomorrow. The end of the series with the Blue Jays winning it. So really sorry if you're a Dodgers fan. Last night was hard to watch. It was hard to watch the crowd. They were pretty disappointed. So, yeah. But pretty interested in the Jays winning the pennant. That would be amazing. And, yeah, that'll be a great thing for the city of Toronto if that could happen. Because the Toronto Maple Leafs are not playing a sport worth watching right now. They are imploding. I don't know what is going on. Yeah, go look at your kitchen plugs. They should be at the height for your local code. There you go. Yeah, they are. So that's a good idea. I'll just go copy them. All righty. Much appreciated, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along. It is always a pleasure. And we'll see you guys next week for more exciting, I don't know, news, something. But we should be around next week. It'll be November. So happy Halloween. And we will see you all in the next one right here on YouTube and streaming here on Twitch. Take care of yourselves. It's been real. Bye, guys.